Beautiful morning in the forest again. It was raining during the night and I hope I maybe can finally make a video during the rain, but I arrived and it stopped raining. Well, it is what it is. The image will be therefore a bit more darker. So, sage, an ancient term that I would like to revive a little bit, like a mystical philosopher or philosopher of mysticism. The boundaries between philosophy and mysticism, I don't think that they can be even clearly defined. So how far it still is philosophy and how far it is mysticism. Although I'm pretty sure some academics will write some definitions about it, but if we go really back into the ancient times, into the ancient philosophers, and with that I mean something like half a millennia BCE, pre-Socratics, or my favorite, proto-Taoists. Proto-Taoists, therefore, because when Zhang Sa and Lao Tzu wrote their famous work, Tao Te Ching and so on, there was no Taoism as a religion. That was put into place in the 1st century AD. So they had no intention to create any Taoist religion, and they definitely were not believers in a sense of any religion. But what they were, undoubtedly, were philosophers of being. And their work, therefore, is somewhere on the edge of mystical and philosophical. Mystical in a sense that they use a lot of paradoxical language to express certain ideas and based on their experiences. And they're somewhere really on the edge of philosophy and mysticism, and I think the categorization attempts really struggle to put them in one or the other place, although everybody will fit them where they want to have them. Right, so the famous phrase from Tao Te Ching of the Tao one can speak of is not the true Tao basically implies that there is something beyond reason, beyond thinking, beyond language, something on the absolute edge of conscious experiencing. And that's where the mystical realm to me begins. So mysticism is actually, in a sense, experiencing the realm beyond rational language, on the absolute outskirts of conscious experience. And that's, I think, what the term sage describes. In regards to Western philosophers, keep in mind that what philosophy did was they defined the philosophy itself as philosophia, which means love for knowledge, and this love for knowledge then consists of two parts. It's the part of love and the knowledge part. So, and in this sense, the knowledge part isn't any like rational, pure, positivistic way of knowing things. So it's not sort of the knowledge that we accept today. So a better translation would be basically philosophy as love for wisdom, because knowledge is something that you can attain, that you can sort of teach from generation to generation. So, for example, physics, right? You learn about the physical universe. You get to the Newtonian worldview and physics. You start, and then you learn about the Einstein's physics. And that's knowledge. You can get it, you can gain it, you can teach it. Wisdom is something more individual, and it needs to be always attained by the individual itself. So Translating philosophy actually as love for wisdom is more precise. If we define a knowledge as something that's transferable, wisdom individually attainable. And in this philosophy, in this term philosophy that consists of those two words, one of the things that I think has been really lost through centuries of philosophical development, especially since the Age of Reason, you know, Descartes. Descartes was a great man, and his achievements are absolutely astonishing. His absolute respect, because imagine a man that, you know, would live at the times of the new era, who would be meditating the way that he would say, okay, I will doubt everything until I find a solid base. And he would live it. That makes him an absolutely unique, astonishing individual that deserves my full respect, because he worked on himself to the edge of his own boundaries and defined his philosophy with this famous sentence, I think, therefore I am. Now, what he did was come to the edge of his own capabilities. But at the same time, this, I think, therefore I am, on which the modern philosophy then was building up, and up to the point where the reason was criticized and so on. Philosophy started to focus a lot on the rational aspects of logic, of building up blocks on blocks on blocks. And I think what they lost, in a sense, was this individual experiencing, and the love, in a sense of, not love for wisdom in a nerdy bookworm sentence that, you know, you will go to the library and you will have your books of your philosophers. You will really appreciate and you will love their thoughts, and, you know, obviously that's a part of it, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's beautiful if you can in yourself come to the feeling that you really appreciate this work of great thinkers, up to the point where you can genuinely say that you love. That's amazing. But we are out for more, because this is just a start. This is just the beginning here. What we are looking for here is going beyond. So philosophy as a love for wisdom has this part of love which is not, to me, meant in a sense of purely academic or historical love, but as this transcending feeling. So if you look at my first video about love and mysticism, I basically argue that, you know, love is a genuinely human ability where you transcend yourself, so you dissolve yourself in the beloved, to the point where you are no longer capable of saying where you end and the beloved starts. It's transcendent. It's a transcendental experience, and it's very close to the mystical, except from a mystical perspective this experience would be with the unity of being, so a conscious unity with the whole cosmos, to keep it easy here for this short video. So this aspect of love is something that got a little bit lost in those centuries where the Age of Reason became, and all the sciences started to define themselves and putting the boundaries where physics ends and biology starts. And we know that this wasn't really the smartest move, because now we come back and say, okay, to actually understand the world, we may need to go interdisciplinary. So you have biology combined with quantum physics to explain how photosynthesis works and so on. So, but at the point of the Age of Reason, right, this this definition of sciences was much more based on the rational part, much more based on logic, and therefore the boundaries have been built quite heavily, which in a sense come to the point where this individual perspective got a little bit lost and became I don't want to say meaningless, because it never was meaningless, but moved in the underground. Some of the philosophers would pursue it, Kierkegaard, but in the academia part it was safer to go more the history of philosophy way than actually be creative, and especially putting in some individual aspects. Henri Bergson with his intuition as a method would be one of the attempts to go beyond. But ultimately, when philosophy tries to define human being, they come inevitably at the edge of anything which is rational, and at the edge of language, because philosophy expresses itself in language, and the more complex you try to build the definitions, the crazier you need to get with the language, and Heidegger would be a great example of that. So that's the way, if you want to keep it sort of rational, logical, and in the boundaries of a language, where you try to work with wisdom as it were knowledge, so as it were transferable, which the sages, especially of the ancient times, first of all, they had no academic boundaries in this sense. So, they wrote what they experienced and how they were able to express it. They clearly stated that expressing is misleading, because what their experience is beyond language, beyond concepts, and it's beyond rational. That doesn't mean that they were irrational. No, they were able to use their rationality for their daily life, but they understood that the rational approach, the ratio, has its boundaries, and the boundaries are directly linked to language. And from a mystical perspective, it's about what goes beyond the language part. So that would be the approach where love comes into play, and where the mystical part emerges as an individual experience of oneness, in which the individuality dissolves into a conscious reflection of the universe as being a part of something bigger, endlessly small part of something endlessly big, in a sense. And again, this is language, so it's completely misleading. But the other part that I argue is that the mystical texts haven't been written to be literally followed or to be literal. They are more like poetry to inspire, up to the point where a feeling can be found, or where it drives to this experience. So that's the sages.